So I've been railroaded into doing a Facebook challenge, which anybody who's spent more than 12 seconds listening to me carry on about society knows I just love Facebook challenges. I must apologise to Chris Totten, who wanted me to take a selfie for suicide a little while back, and I didn't. And I probably should have done that. I think that's a reasonable cause. But we're talking specifically in this one about PTSD in soldiers. I'm talking about PTSD in general. And I feel like being a history student, a history scholar, if you like, and having another advantage that I'm also a history fan, we can actually look at different significant ideas throughout the armed conflicts of the 20th century, of the 1900s, specifically the World Wars, and then later we'll talk about Vietnam, and we'll talk about the Gulf War as well. Yesterday I talked about the idea that Napoleon thought he was unbeatable because he spent 50,000 lives a month, and in World War I, in the trenches in Europe, the generals there were spending 50,000 lives a day. Now, to put this into perspective, the entire Australian casualty count in World War I was about 60,000. So we contributed enough deaths, if you like, if you want to think of it like that, for a day and a quarter out of 4 years. We talk about World War I being the biggest loss of human life in Australian history. We can build arguments about the Indigenous and so forth, but I'm talking about contemporary Australian history, modern Australian history. The cost to Australia was 60,000 lives. Now, Joseph Stalin, okay, he's a World War II guy. He says one life is a tragedy and one death is a tragedy and 1,000 deaths are a statistic. So my question is, how do you as a soldier face the idea every day that 50,000 other people doing the same thing you're doing in the same area you're doing it in are going to die, and hopefully you're not one of them. Very, very rarely do you gain or lose any ground. You're talking about costing 1,000 lives to gain 10 meters across a field. But I thought I'd put that into perspective. 50,000 lives a day is one thing to say. Then you consider that the entire Australian contribution in terms of casualties to the First World War was 60,000. So from now, what is it, midday, until 5:30 tomorrow, it's midday on Friday until 5:30 on Saturday, the same number of people are killed in the trenches in Europe as the number of Australians that were killed in the entire First World War. So think about that, and next video, we'll talk about some of the tactics that were used by the governments and so forth to almost shame people into signing up to compete. Fight, sure. You can tell I've been doing a jiu-jitsu class. So there's some perspective. And now, thank you, Lyndall. We need to do some push-ups. We'll try and make some form a little bit better than yesterday, hey?